Hello, my name is Marcus Ruiz Evans, Chief Executive Officer of the largest California-based secession organization in these 50 states as they stand today. We're going to get right into some controversy. We've been talking about national divorce here at Yes California. We actually invented the term 3 years ago. We republicized it in 2020 at Christmas time. And now in 2021, the topic is in vogue. Many people who are not connected to Yes California are beginning to talk about the same thing that we espoused a while back. One of those people is sitting Congressmember Taylor Greene. That's why the tie today. Now, Marjorie Taylor Greene is the first official member of the federal government since 1861 to actually seriously pose the question of if states should be allowed to secede. Now, she had a poll. It was originally released a few days ago. The tallies just came out recently, so we're going to go to the final total. The total poll of 83,800 folks around America was 43% for secession, 9% undecided, and 48% against secession. That poll ended at October 12th at about 6 in the evening. Now, here's the thing. You already have people calling Yes California and saying how embarrassing it was for us to cover this because the support for secession wasn't over half. And you already have people on major talk shows talking about how stupid and ridiculous and silly and dumb Marjorie Taylor Greene appears. Well, let's get into that. The fact is that a lot of these people are ignorant. They're not going to tell you what we will cover here because the media doesn't do their job anymore when it talks about this most important discussion that Californians can have and Americans. 48% was against secession. 43% was for it, but an additional 9% said they were undecided on the topic of if America should be allowing secession or not. That means that there's 52% of the population, according to Marjorie Taylor Greene's poll, that is not opposed to secession. As we've said, when you're asking somebody if they're for secession, it's like asking them if they want to commit a violent robbery or give up their kids. It's not asking for the flavor of pizza. It's a big question. And for people to say they're undecided, that frankly means they're open to the discussion. And so when we look at the number of undecided plus the people who were for it, it's 52% were not opposed. That's over half. You're not going to see people in the media bring that up. You're not going to see pundits bring that up, but we will. Why? Because it happened to us here in California. So go back to 2017. There were two polls by multiple organizations showing the same thing, about 32% for secession, an additional 15.7% were undecided, and about 48% were against. Now, the media would ignore that there was a third question asked. They would say there's 32% for secession, so that must mean that the entire rest of the poll is against. That's not what happened. They asked three separate questions, like Marjorie Taylor Greene. Are you for it, against it, or undecided? It was 32% for, and about 15.7% were undecided, which means it's about 47.5% were not opposed to discussing secession in California, according to multiple polls February 2017. They're playing the same game now with Marjorie Taylor Greene's poll. They're ignoring the question of undecided. I literally watched one of the guys that worked on Young Turks. He had a guy on, and the guy just goes, "What's undecided mean?" And they just, didn't even think about it. Undecided means that's somebody who's not against secession. Otherwise, they would have said so. They asked the same format here in California, and we got the same results. Now, the media did not say 47.5% were open to discussing secession. They said 32% were for secession, so everybody else must be against it. They're doing literally the same thing again now. They're ignoring the undecided. They're going for 48% were against secession and 43% were for it, so more people are against secession. Here's the thing. You have to count the undecided. It was asked. That's 52% are not opposed to secession in this poll of 83,000 people. Average polling looks at about 3,000 to 5,000 people. Now, I understand this is not by a university or a reputable person per se, but 83,000 people when the average polls 1/20th of that number, this is significant. And the fact is that already now the poll's being released. There are articles coming out, and there are people calling and saying, you guys at Yes California and anybody who cover this is so silly and stupid. See, a majority was against secession. They are not pointing out the 52%. Not going to see it. And that's why we covered it, because they didn't do that with Cal Exit. They acted like that third question was never asked, and they just inferred it was for yes or against. That's not what these polls are asking. So when you look at for plus undecided versus automatically opposed, it begins to look like 50-50, meaning half the country for, and you can't say where it's going to go. Here's the other thing that you're not going to see a lot of people bring up with the Marjorie Taylor Greene poll. So October 11th at 8:19 p.m., we looked at that poll. It showed 51% for secession, 11% undecided, 38% for staying together. So 51% for secession, 39% are under 40 for not being for secession. And then in 24 hours, the numbers change. So I want you to understand this. This poll goes on for days, multiple days. The very last day, within just a 24-hour period. So this poll's going on. It's trending at 51% for secession, less than 40% against. And then just in the last day, the numbers get completely reversed. 40% for staying together and close to 50% against. So when we look at polls, and you look at a poll that seems to trend in one direction and then radically shifts within the last 24-hour period, that's usually called outside involvement. Now, date this for yourself. Look at when the articles came out talking about Marjorie Greene's poll. Then look at screenshots of that poll after that time. What you're going to find is her poll was up for days. It showed one trend. Then a bunch of articles came out talking about how she's crazy and this is horrible. And suddenly, within 24 hours of those articles, the poll completely switched to another one. So is that bias? When you have multiple newspapers and commentators saying, look how stupid and bad this person is. And then suddenly, within hours of all those articles coming out, the poll literally shifts from one direction to the other. That's not unbiased, folks. Again, the media won't mention that. So 52% were not against secession. That's what the final results showed. They won't mention that. 24 hours before, the results were completely the opposite. And this is exactly what they did with Yes California 4 years ago. They ignored that third middle ground question and said, well, it must be everybody against it. So when you actually look at these polls, what it showed was before the media jumped in and biased the sample, it was over half for secession and under half clearly against. Then when the media got involved, suddenly they shifted it, but they could only really shift it to 48 dead set against and 52 open to it out of a poll of 89,000. That's huge. You're going to see people like the damage report talking about how this is stupid and it didn't go the way that she wanted. I think it did go the way that she wanted. It's a huge sample. And if you had 60% saying that they were against secession, maybe that'd be definitive. You didn't. You had 52%. You had 48% against secession. You couldn't even break half on the Taylor Greene poll with everyone in the media saying jump on this and it's bad. So it was 51% for secession. Everyone in the media got in and encouraged people to look how stupid this poll is. So people obviously jumped in the poll and they could only shift it a few percentage points. And they couldn't even get the people against secession to go over half. That's with everyone involved. And the final result is really over half are not opposed to secession. And the poll was completely different 24 hours before. So check that all out. Look at the poll results throughout the week. Look at the articles that attacked her. Look at how the trajectory changed. Look at who's covering all three questions. Make sure that they're covering what it means for all three and not just inferring. And I bet you're going to come to the exact same results we did. The fact is that America does want a national divorce. Taylor Greene just simply showed it. The system doesn't like that, and now they must ruin her reputation to do it and spread misinformation about the actual facts. I don't like Taylor Greene. I'm not a fan of hers. But when I see games and mischief, and it perfectly matches with what we went through at Yes California, I see the system attacking again, and I will not tolerate that. Thank you. And once again, Yes California, where we cover the news that simply no one else in America will.